Any hint at a VP?
Well, I have a lot of good people. We had a lot of them here a couple of days ago on the stage, and we really do. Who do you like?
Honestly, Tucker Carlson. I think he'll give the truth. He'll speak the truth.
A lot of people don't disagree with you.
I want the truth. And
Tucker is a good man. I will tell you. He's been a good man. He's been a friend of mine. He loves our country, I will tell you. You like Tucker?
I love Tucker.
Who do you like?
I like Tucker Carlson.
Who do you like?
I'm from Europe.
Oh, well, he likes Macron. He likes Macron for VP. Let's take a little choice.
Senator Scott.
Who do you like? A couple of names. Throw out.
Tim Scott.
All right, folks. So as I'm sure you've heard, speculation over Donald Trump's VP has been the talk of the town. And Donald Trump only further fueled that speculation by recently holding a retreat at Mar A Lago where he invited a bunch of his potential VP candidates and basically did a giant tryout and interview for them, which was pretty interesting. It was pretty Celebrity Apprentice style tactics there. And with that said, let's just start talking about this, because I know that the debate over Trump's running mate has not been something I've weighed in on or given my opinion on extensively, so I figured we might as well break the ice with this video. Now, to be clear, in this video, I'm not explicitly going to say one person as to who Donald Trump's VP should be, nor am I going to give an in-depth breakdown on every single candidate. Now, if you guys like this video and if you guys like the VP discussion, then we may do a part 2 or a follow-up video where I get more specific into each candidate. But in this video, I really just want to lay out a framework, kind of give the criteria of how I think Trump should choose as vice president and what type of characteristics he should be looking for. I will reference certain people and say, hey, this person would be good at this, this person would be bad at this. But again, I'm not going to say exactly who I think it should be at the moment. But again, be sure to leave a like on this video if you want me to get more into my opinions on that. So with that said, folks, let's just get started by first defining what exactly is the role of a vice president. This is more so to more specifically lay out something I think a lot of the Trump base necessarily always understands, which is why do you choose a running mate and what do you seek to accomplish in the VP selection? So let's be clear about that by first defining that. What is the VP's role during the campaign itself? And if you look at this historically, and I think this is still the type of conventional wisdom that Trump is applying here, is that during the campaign, during election season, the VP choice is usually someone who is meant to expand your outreach to a voter base that perhaps you're weak in, or you really want to make sure you win or win a huge percentage of, right? This is a big reason why Joe Biden chose Kamala Harris in 2020, because when you look at everything that was going on in the country, BLM, all of the racial stuff, Biden chose Kamala, obviously, to outreach to the black vote. This is also a big reason that Donald Trump chose Mike Pence in 2016, because back then, a lot of old school evangelical Christian Republicans were turned off by Trump's demeanor, and so he wanted to choose someone who would maybe be that type of outreach. Now, that said, I think in 2024, Trump already has the evangelical vote pretty strongly locked up, and so I don't think this is as much of a concern this time around, but it does go to show and illustrate kind of why candidates actually choose VPs, because, you know, it's one thing you want them to help you win the election, but then on the flip side, as president, the VP doesn't actually really do a whole lot. They don't have a whole lot of power, and yeah, in theory, you could use the VP as an advisor, but most presidents historically don't. And this is important to point out because with all of that considered, hot take, but I want to make this clear to people as I explain what I think my thought process is and what I think in many ways Donald Trump's thought process is with this, is that the vice president does not have to be the base favorite, right? It does not have to be the person that everyone in your hardcore voter base is calling for or just wants to see on the ticket. Why is that? Because, well, obviously your hardcore voter base for the most part is already going to be voting for you. That's why they supported, say, Donald Trump in the primary. So you want to go after someone maybe that, hey, Trump is not so popular with this voter group, right? And so I bring that up to obviously get out of the way that a lot of people are immediately going to go to the comment section screaming, saying it needs to be Vivek Ramaswamy. We want Vivek Ramaswamy. And don't get me wrong, I like Vivek as well. And if there is other criteria that Vivek would fill, and we'll get into that, then maybe that's an argument for him as the VP. But just to be clear, I don't think it should just be a matter of who's the best on the Trump agenda or who's the most based or who do you want to see on the ticket the most, because I think it is a lot deeper than that. Now, that said, there is the argument that you choose a VP as your potential political successor, but it's also important to point out, we can point to plenty of times in history where the VP took over after the president, but there's also plenty of times where it's not. So, understanding what the VP is for, they have sort of this practical role to sort of help your political support. It's not just about choosing, hey, your favorite single person on the world. Let's get into specifically what I think the criteria for Donald Trump's vice president and running mate should be. So obviously, criteria number one, as I laid out before, is that it needs to be someone who expands Donald Trump's voter base, right? Helps him in areas that he may potentially be weak in. Now, a lot of people are going to bring up minority outreach, right? Choose someone as Trump who will help you win the black vote or the Hispanic vote. To me, I think that's looking at it a little bit wrong. Because first of all, Trump already has pretty high minority support for the standards of a Republican candidate. And so I'm not sure that's exactly the most pressing thing. But then on top of that, I don't know if there's currently a potential VP candidate who I genuinely believe would substantially help win, say, the black vote or the Hispanic vote any more than Donald Trump already does. So I think that's a misunderstanding of it. But where I definitely think Trump's real political weakness is with suburban women and sort of suburban moderates, right? The independent quote unquote voters, however you want to say it. And you certainly want someone who in that regard maybe softens or tones back the, firebrand image of Donald Trump, right? Someone who maybe, hey, suburban women don't like Trump's personality. And on this criteria alone, you could maybe make a case for someone like, I don't know, Tim Scott. Marco Rubio may also be good at sort of accomplishing that politically. I also think that specifically Lee Zeldin or Glenn Youngkin would be perfect at winning that suburban moderate vote. We've already seen them do that in past elections, but unfortunately, they don't seem to be very high on the VP shortlist at the moment. So that is what it is. But I really think, again, it has to be someone who can help win that suburban moderate vote, especially with women. And that's not to say it has to be a woman, but just someone who will, tone back or help that image in the suburbs a lot. Now, on the flip side, I will say this in concession to the base is that while it should be someone who helps Trump in certain regards, it certainly cannot be someone who totally alienates the Trump base. And this is obviously the reason why Nikki Haley is a terrible candidate for vice president, because some people may make the argument that, hey, well, Nikki could help you with the suburban moderates. Nikki can help you win the woman vote. But obviously, while you don't have to choose the 100% base favorite, you also don't want to choose someone who totally pisses off the base, totally alienates them. I think at most, you want someone who is at least lukewarm, kind of gets a B to B plus rating with the base, and Nikki Haley far too resented by MAGA to allow that to happen. You may turn off your own voters in the process of that.
I believe the best choice for Donald Trump is Nikki Haley. I really do.
Oh, hell no. She is establishment. There's no way in the world. Okay, which is going to be more dangerous and more coming with consequences? Is there more benefit for doing it, or is it more cons for doing it?
And I would also say that this potentially maybe might be a problem with someone like, say, Marco Rubio, because of obviously the beef of 2016 and all of that. And that is something you have to consider when choosing your VP as well, is, hey, don't vote for someone who the base entirely hates or despises. And by the way, maybe on that front, in the event that something does happen to Trump, you do at least want someone who will not completely go off the rails or betray your agenda if they're forced to step in. And that is certainly something, in my opinion, that Nikki Haley would obviously do. And so you can't choose someone like that either. You have to sort of balance the electability front with the non-Trump base while also retaining the popularity among your own base as well. Okay, so that said, criteria number 3 is I think it needs to be someone who does not carry excess baggage, right? You don't want someone who is going to be a giant liability for your campaign and its ticket. And I think given recent events, a lot of you may know where I'm going with that and why I bring that up. But listen, in general, it's a pretty good rule. You don't want your VP or your running mate to be someone who has a bunch of problems and they're causing all these issues for your campaign. But I think especially in the circumstance of Donald Trump, when you look at him as a political candidate, guys, let's be real. Trump already has so much baggage, if you want to call it that, as a candidate to begin with, okay? Obviously, a lot of it is bogus. The media smears him. He's facing all these criminal trials right now, and we understand it's political persecution. We don't like it, but let's also be real. It's going to be a lot to deal with, and I say that all to say that Donald Trump is already going to have to spend so much time in this campaign defending himself, defending his reputation from all the smear, all the baggage, all the scandal, whatever you want to call it. We, as the Trump base and Donald Trump as a candidate, do not have the time to also have to spend all of that energy defending Trump's VP as well. And obviously, with that in mind, someone like Kristi Noem is immediately eliminated, okay? Because you know you have the recent story with her and killing her dogs and all that nonsense. And look, even if you like Kristi Noem, even if you think that story is smear or it's taken out of context or whatever, guys, again, we just have to consider it's just not something we want to deal with. There are plenty of other people to choose that don't have that type of liability. Obviously, you can't choose someone who the whole campaign they're going to be talking about, oh, Donald Trump's VP is killing her dog.
Did the dog story come up in a conversation with Trump?
I talk to President Trump all the time.
About the dog?
About a lot of things. And right now, I tell you what, he is being persecuted in a political hunt, witch hunt in this court case. So I'm proud of him about how tough he is and how well he is doing.
Did you bring up the dog?
Yes, enough, Stuart.
Did you
this
bring
interview
up the dog
is ridiculous, what you were doing right now.
I don't
so you
think
need to stop. It is.
Okay.
It is.
We'll
Let's
stop.
talk about some real topics that Americans care about.
I'm afraid we're out of time.
Oh, well, of course we are.
We do thank you for being with us.
But I will also say, and look, guys, don't take this the wrong way. I like Vivek Ramaswamy. I think he's a strong successor candidate to Donald Trump. But this may also be a concern for someone like Vivek. And I say that because, you know, again, Vivek is a fighter. We like Vivek. I agree with almost everything he says nowadays. But he, let's also admit it, does have a lot of quote-unquote maybe controversial opinions and past statements that if he is chosen as Trump's VP, he will have to spend time defending, and he'll have to be on defense about that instead of, you know, being on offense in defense of Donald Trump. And that could potentially be a little bit of a liability for Trump's ticket.
I think it's shameful. If I may finish just answering.
Well, let me
this is really important.
I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you here because
I
you're
know
saying that
the establishment doesn't approve of this message. I know
that there were federal agents.
We should be able to talk about this.
You're saying that there were federal agents.
This is important to talk about.
You are saying there were federal agents in the crowd on January 6th.
Yep.
There is no evidence that there were federal agents in the crowd on January 6th.
So why, before Congress, when pressed on what the number was, they didn't say there were none? They just couldn't say how many there were.
So you're saying that that you have not seen any evidence that there were.
We've seen multiple informants suggesting that there were. We know people were FBI informants who were asked to
Is there any evidence?
May I just finish this?
And so, folks, again, hot take, don't take that the wrong way. I'm not trying to attack Vivek Ramaswamy for it, but that is maybe an area where we have to consider, we have to question, hey, is Vivek's role in the Trump White House, and I do absolutely hope to see that he gets one, the best suited as VP, or maybe should that go to someone else and we let Vivek fulfill a different role instead of being the vice president? Again, just something to consider. I'm not making a holistic judgment in this video. It's just something to think about there. And lastly here, folks, criteria number 4 for me, and this is something I think is a little bit underrated. Not a lot of conservatives are talking about this, but I think this is of the utmost importance, is can Donald Trump's vice president absolutely destroy Kamala Harris in the VP debate. And I think a lot of people sometimes forget that this is even a thing, which is, yeah, we have the 3 normal presidential debates, Trump versus Biden, but there is also a 4th debate, which is going to be Trump's VP against Kamala Harris. Now, keep in mind the phraseology there. It's very specific. I didn't just say, can they beat Kamala Harris in a VP debate? Can they handle themselves in the VP debate? I say they have to absolutely be able to destroy, to humiliate Kamala Harris. And the reason I say that is this. While there is a VP debate, it's not the most watched thing in the world, right? It's not the most important thing there is by far. So if you have a guy who just has, say, a B+ performance, hey, he overall won the debate, he was better on the substance and the issues, most people are not going to pay attention to that. Most people are going to forget about that. However, if you can get that iconic soundbite where Trump's VP candidate just totally embarrasses, totally bodies, totally humiliates Kamala Harris, and that soundbite goes around, it's all over the internet, it's all over the news, that could be maybe something that potentially moves the needle and causes significant change in the electorate and the political conversation. And that's why precisely you can't just have someone who's okay at it. No, if you want to attack the Biden campaign from this angle, they need to embarrass Kamala Harris in the debate. Now, obviously, I just kind of dogged on Vivek Ramaswamy for the last criteria, but in fairness, this is certainly something that Vivek would be very good at, right? Whereas someone like maybe Tim Scott, hey, you know, they do okay, but they wouldn't be super dominant. They're not the most articulate person ever. We know Vivek is a bulldog. We know Vivek would dominate that debate. And this is also someone that, hey, let's remember who would be perfect at this. Tulsi Gabbard. This is another sort of out there name, sort of a wild card that's being pitched as Trump's VP pick. And if we'll remember, think back to 2020, what is the single most iconic moment that Tulsi Gabbard is arguably the most famous for in her entire political career? It was embarrassing and ending Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign. Let's take a look just to remind ourselves.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
So yeah, Tulsi Gabbard might not be the most conventional VP pick for Trump. It certainly is a little bit of a gamble. It's a wild card pick. But if you want to bring up something that might be very important and might help out Trump a lot, how about the fact that there is arguably nobody that Kamala Harris fears debating more than Tulsi Gabbard? Again, something to consider, and it's something that I don't think is being discussed a lot, is can you dominate that VP debate? So with that said, folks, just to recap here, that basically wraps up my basic criteria in this video. Again, I think it needs to be someone who expands Trump's voter base, specifically with those suburban women, specifically with those suburban moderates, while at the same time not completely alienating MAGA, which again disqualifies someone like Nikki Haley. I also said make sure it's not someone with excess baggage or liability. And again, lastly, folks, can they dominate that VP debate? Outside of that, I think a lot of other maybe potential criteria, they could matter, but they're not really of the utmost importance. Again, guys, you know, the VP doesn't have a lot of political power. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be an automatic successor to Trump anyway. And so maybe some of the other things here we can put a little bit to the side. With that said, folks, let me know your thoughts on all of that in the comment section down below. Again, let me know if you do want me to do the follow-up video where maybe I'll do a tier list and kind of break down specifically what I actually think of all the different VP candidates and maybe make a little bit more explicit of a decision of here's who I want to be the VP, or maybe here's a couple of people who are on my favorites list. Be sure to let me know. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, Alpha moves only. God bless. Have a very great rest of your day, and peace.